The moment we've all deserved. Hello, good morning everyone, and welcome to today's event. Welcome to the Global Press Conference for the upcoming Amazon MGM Studios Film Challengers, which has early access shows in select theaters this Monday, April 22nd, and in theaters everywhere next Friday, April 26th. I'm Kelly Carter. I'm a senior entertainment reporter for ESPN's Anscape, and I'll be moderating today's presser. And so I want to welcome our talent today, of course, with Luca Guadagnino, Josh O'Connor, yes, you can clap. Josh O'Connor, Zendaya, Mike Faist, Amy Pascal, and Justin Kuritzkes. Did I say it correctly, kind of, sort of? Give me another chance. Justin Kuritzkes.
No.
Kuritzkes.
When I tell you, I landed that so well before this moment.
You were great.
My sincerest apologies. Give me a tip.
You got Zendaya right.
Okay.
There's one.
Yeah, I usually get none of them right.
I was losing sleep the night before, so thank you guys for that. Of course, we're going to talk for a few minutes, and then we're going to open it up to audience questions. For those attending in person, please make sure to submit your questions via the QR code that you were given. And for those attending virtually, please add your questions using the Q&A function. So, of course, I want to start with Ms. Amy Pascal. I know that your producing partner isn't here, but she found the script and brought it to you. What was it about that script that just locked you in and said, I have to do this?
Well, Rachel runs my company, and we've been working together for the last 20 years. And Justin's agent, Sue, sent it to Rachel, and she loved it. And Rachel sent it to me, and I loved it. And then we begged Justin to be the producers of it, and we had quite a bit of competition. But I think what really locked it, and I don't think Z knows this, but I'll say it now, is we promised we'd get her to do it. I said, I know there's a lot of other producers, but I know Z personally, and I will get her to do this movie. And that is why Justin chose us. I'm sorry.
I can confirm that's part of it. No, when I heard that Amy was interested in the script, I was completely over the moon because, Amy is a legend.
Yeah.
And, there's a lot of phases of this process that have felt very surreal, but if I'm being honest, that was the moment when the movie felt real to me, when I felt like, oh, this might actually happen.
This may actually be a thing.
Was when I heard that Amy wanted to do it, so.
I love that. Well, walk me back to, your process with writing it, because that story is incredible, and I don't know if everyone here in the room and watching virtually is aware of where the idea was born. So tell me where that was born and how you kind of worked to what we finally see on screen.
Yeah, of course. Prior to writing the script, I hadn't been that massive of a sports fan or a tennis fan. And then around 2018, I just happened to turn on the US Open, and it was the final between Serena Williams and Naomi Osaka. And there was this very controversial call from the umpire where he accused Serena Williams of receiving coaching from the sidelines. And I had never heard of this rule, but and Serena Williams was saying that didn't happen, I would never do that. But immediately this struck me as this intensely cinematic situation where you're all alone on your side of the court, and there's this one other person in this massive tennis stadium who cares as much about what happens to you as you do, but you can't talk to them. And for whatever reason, it just clicked in my mind, well, what if you really needed to talk about something? And what if it was something beyond tennis? What if it was something that was going on with the two of you? And what if it involved the person on the other side of the net? How would you have that conversation?
Yeah.
And how could you communicate the tension of that situation using the tools that are specific to film?
Yeah.
That was really where it all started for me.
No, that's beautiful. And of course, to bring your words to life, you needed the right cast in place to do that, and do that you guys did.
Can I say one more thing about the screenplay before you move on?
Please.
It is very, very difficult to tell a story that goes backwards and forwards, but only moves forwards as a storytelling device. And one of the things that I just want to say between Justin and Luca and my producing partner, Rachel and Zendaya, is that we were most impressed with is that it's very, very, very difficult to do a story that takes place in many different timelines, and yet you're never confused. And the story is constantly moving forward. And one more thing I want to say, and then I'll give it up, is that it is very rare that commercial movies are about adult relationships and about sex. And I was sick of it. So I thought it was high time that people kiss in movies and more, and there was no better director to bring that to life than Luca.
I'm sure lots of people agree with that have watched this film, right? Zendaya, where were you in your career when Amy brought this project to you, and what made you say, I have to do this? And I also want to be a producer on it as well.
I believe I was still shooting Euphoria at the time. And it's one of those things where everybody knows that, like, especially when I'm working, it's really hard to get me to do anything else other than focus on what I'm going to do tomorrow on set. And so we kind of had like a mock table read at my agent's house, and I just fell in love with the script. I mean, it was brilliant, and it also made me very nervous as something to tackle because of I think how complicated these characters are. I think because of also, I couldn't define what kind of movie it was. Like, it was funny. It was so funny, but I wouldn't say it was a comedy. But there was drama, but I wouldn't say it was just a drama, and it had tennis, but it wasn't like a sports movie. So I think that feeling that it was kind of just like everything at once in this beautiful way was terrifying, but equally exhilarating and exciting. And it was a character that I feel like I had never read before, I'd never seen before, and she scared the shit out of me. So I was like, maybe I need to do this, And I think the being able to be or a part of it in a creative sense, and hopefully be in service to the characters and our incredible team here, and help in any way I can to help bring that to life. And then hearing that Luca had read it and was interested in doing it was like a dream, because I was such a fan of his work for so long, and we had met once at a Fenty dinner, and he was so kind and so sweet to me. He helped me get vegetarian options because I couldn't speak Italian, and and I loved him then. But I'd been hoping to work with him in some capacity. So the idea that it would be this was, magical. And we sat and we talked over Zoom, and I understood that he understood the kind of movie we wanted to create. He understood these characters in such a deep sense, down to like, we were joking about what kind of lotion she would, use before she goes to bed at night. You know what I mean? These are these little details that I'm like, oh my gosh, this woman, you get her, you see her. And he had that same instinct for all the characters, so it just felt like an obvious yes.
Yeah, those little nuances are really great in the film. Luca, let's bring you into the conversation. What about you? What made you say, I gotta direct this script?
Me.
Yeah. Amy and I, we are courting each other since many years now. There is a sort of an unspoken love story between the two of us. But when Amy sent me the script, I was working on something else, and she was calling me every half hour to ask me if I was reading it or not. And eventually I had to read it while working. The script was fantastic. Mm-hmm. The characters were amazing. The structure was so cinematic that I just immediately, instinctively felt that the company of Amy, the company of Zendaya, and the company of Justin, the artistic endeavor that we could all gather together in this would have been fantastic. And so I think I said I was in immediately, like...
Immediately.
Yeah.
Immediately.
Yes.
Yes.
And it was meetings, it was encounters with Justin, encounters, re-meeting with Zendaya. And I would say something that I don't like particularly movie sets, because I am a control freak and the chaos I don't like.
Mm-hmm.
But I felt this was a very kind of like playful, there was playfulness in making this movie that made me very happy about it.
Okay, I love that. Thank you for that answer.
Can I also say something else?
Please, always.
That then when Mike and Josh joined this team,
Yeah.
this movie came to life in
Yeah.
a whole other way, because
Oh, absolutely.
as complicated as the character is that Z plays,
Mhm.
the character that the characters that they play are really, really exquisitely difficult roles, because they do unspeakably terrible things to each other, and you love them,
Yeah.
and you understand them, and you're like, oh yeah, I get that, right? And they make you understand them on such a human level. It was such a beautiful experience for all of us working together. It was quite something.
Thank you for adding that. Mike, how did this project come to you, and why was it, I'm assuming, a quick yes for you to do this?
I was home in Ohio, and I think like Z, it's really hard for my team to get me to read anything. And I got
Period.
Period, pretty much, yeah. And my agent actually called me, Sam. She gave me a call and she said, Mike, you have to read this script. And I was like, all right, wow, that sounds serious. So I read it. And you know, in those moments when you're like, fuck, I hate when other people are right.
So mine.
Yes. And so then from there, I met with Luca. Luca and I, you were in Italy, I was in Ohio, we Zoomed, we met each other, we chatted. And then they flew me to London to meet with Z. And we did a screen test there. And I remember I left the screen test and I was walking around London and I actually felt like it went atrociously wrong. And I thought, oh, okay, well, I did not book that at all. And then Luca gave me a call and he said, Mike, where are you? Come back, have lunch with me. And so we sat down, had lunch, and he just was, we just chatted some more and got to know each other. But the thing that stuck out with me personally that was the draw to want to do this, besides the script and the team, was because it was always going to be art, is what they were asking me to kind of look at. And the thing that really stuck out with me about the character was this idea of a person, this craftsman who's fallen out of love with his craft. And he's so desperately trying to kind of get back to that place of purity, that place of, Josh uses the word flow, where you're just, it's like a form of transcendence, when you're just in your work and just in your craft and you actually love the process of doing it.
Yeah.
And I think for all of us at times, we kind of ebb and flow throughout our artistic endeavors to always strive to try to find those projects that pull something out of us that makes us feel compelled to really conjure the things for ourselves, to pursue it to the fullest extent that we can.
Yeah.
And that just leapt off the page with me, genuinely, with this character. And I thought, I understand this very deeply. And I would be very, very lucky to be a part of it.
Kind of what Zendaya was saying about being scared, to like a character scaring you, and you're like, I got to do it. You got to conquer that.
And that's the thing, right? It's like when that feeling of fear pops up within you, that's a really good indicator of you probably should do it.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Josh, what about yourself? Where did you even start with building this character? What made you say yes, and then where did you start? Did you model him after anyone in particular, or?
Well, what made me say yes was Luca and Zendaya, and Mike wasn't on board at that point, but if Mike had been on board, that would have also contributed. I think also kind of fundamental, I remember having I knew Luca before, we'd met a few years before, and we talked about making some work together for a while. What I liked about Patrick initially, I love both the characters, and I actually read the script like a year or two before, because I met Justin in New York because my American agent, I just moved to New York, and I was on the phone to my agent one day and I said, I've got no friends. And so he set me up on a friend date with me. And I guess to kind of like guise it under the idea of like, this is also work, Josh. He gave me a script to read, but really it was just, Josh, here's a friend to make. So we met on 9th Street.
I was just embarrassed. Josh had also just won an Emmy at that point, and we were at this coffee shop, and people kept coming up to congratulate him.
They're not real friends, just. Anyway, so I'd read the script before, but then when Luca asked me about doing it, initially Patrick was kind of, I thought this was beyond my reach, and I felt like this was a character that was so confident, so front-footed, so comfortable in himself, even though he has, as we all do, fears and insecurities, but really is, he's completely, lives life to the full, and is very accepting of his flaws, and all those things seemed like a reach, and Luca very brilliantly kind of accepted that and made me feel comfortable around that. And there was a process, once we started preparing, where, we had to kind of pull those things out. It didn't fit comfortably for me to not hide. He doesn't hide at all. So all those things contributed, but there was no doubt really. It's such an honor and a privilege to get to work with people like this, and it was an immediate yes.
Yeah. Well, now, of course, I'm going to kick to the audience questions. Apologies in advance if I mispronounce anyone's name. Again, sorry, Justin. Barbaros Tappan from Hurriyet newspaper asks, Zendaya, Josh, and Mike, can you talk about your tennis training process for the role?
Tennis training. Yeah, the gym work, as Josh puts it. Man, I mean, we were lucky enough to kind of, I don't know, I call it summer camp. It was great, because essentially we got about almost 6 weeks before we actually started production to just work on tennis. And we were under the support and guidance of Brad, who is incredible and an iconic person in his own right. And truthfully, I had no idea about tennis. I knew nothing. All I really knew of tennis was Venus and Serena. And so, again, it was one of those things that it was terrifying as a challenge to take on, because you're supposed to be a great tennis player, and I'd never been a great tennis player. And I think I was incredibly nervous showing up, and I think we were all incredibly nervous showing up on that first day. And so we did tennis training beside each other. We worked out beside each other, and we also had rehearsal beside each other, which was such a privilege to be able to have that time to work on the script, to get to know each other. But during that tennis training time, I think I was, driving myself crazy trying to, become a tennis player, right? I was trying to learn the fundamentals and make sure, I remember when I first started hitting the ball, it just would go off into trees. It was just never even close to the court. And I was like, damn, I got a long way to go. And eventually, with tennis, if you're picking it up, it's not a game you could just pick up, right? Unless you've been playing since 4, it's not happening for you. You know what I mean? So, I would come in and I feel like I would get it. I'm like, yeah, I got this. Okay, something clicked, and then you come in the next day and you can't do it, and you can't recreate it. You're like, damn, back to square one. And I think there's one thing too is they're feeding me balls, right? I once asked, I said, I want to try to see what it feels like to return a serve. Someone hit me a real one. The way that thing flew by me so fast, and at the time, I still had glasses. I've since had LASIK, so I couldn't even see the dang thing. So at some point, I realized, okay, my approach has to be different, because this whatever this is isn't working. And as soon as the ball's flying at me, all of a sudden my fundamentals and all the form, everything is gone. I'm just trying to hit it or get out the way. And so we eventually, you know, especially watching Luca, I think he was starting to build these scenes and choreograph them because every shot in these tennis sequences was storyboarded, and it was so thought out and it was so meticulous. So I said, okay, well maybe that's how I need to approach it too. Let me approach it like choreography. I'm a dancer, so let me dance this thing out, you know? And I began to just focus on, we had amazing tennis doubles, and I just wanted to sync up with her, right? I wanted to understand her footwork, her, you know, her patterns, her movements, and just try to make it as seamless as possible. I wanted to look like her mirror, you know? And then I'd record myself next to her and I'd watch it back. I'm like, I could do that a little bit, her arms a little more and her shoulders a little bit, you know, and she's quicker on her feet, you know? So that kind of became my entryway into looking like a tennis player, because I knew that at some point I wasn't gonna be one, but I could fake it. So yeah, that kind of became eventually where we got, but the training was pretty intense, and it was great to do it beside them because I know they were just as committed as well, and yeah, we're struggling together.
Eric Green from Immersive Media asked, Luca, can you please tell us about the making of the kinetic tennis sequence at the end, because it is quite breathtaking.
Thank you. Like as Zendaya just said, we rehearsed a lot. We rehearsed the dramatic part of the movie many days, and then we were on the court every day, a few hours, watching the points, understanding how those sports action had to be reflective of the dynamic between the characters. So basically, I started from the unit, every little gesture, and we adapt until we understood that the final sequence, the final moment, had to be basically a silent sequence or a non-dialogue sequence that was going to be very clear to everyone in the audience to understand the emotional ramp up that had to be built there. So it took a long time of conception, the drawing, shooting. I think that sequence, the last 10 minutes took us 8 days to shoot, more or less, which was incredible.
Wow.
And then a lot of work in post-production.
Okay, thank you for that. Love this question. Kennedy Munson at Spelman College says, as a person heavily interested in music and sound, something I adore about Luca's films are his usage of an excellent soundtrack and score. For the cast, I was wondering what song kept you grounded during this film experience and helped get you into character?
We got asked this yesterday, and we all struggled a bit with it, didn't we?
Interesting.
But I have a playlist on Spotify which is called Boston Marathon. I didn't do the Boston Marathon, but I started it because Mike and I went to watch the Boston Marathon while we were shooting challenges, and it inspired me. And then a year later I did do the London Marathon, and so I started this playlist, which I think in my head now is my London Marathon playlist, but I think must have stemmed from making challenges. The lead up, the sort of follow-up question to that is name a song on it, and I can't. So I
the
can't.
playlist.
Yeah.
Make the playlist public.
There is music out there.
What about you guys? Is there any song in particular?
No.
I can't think of one. As soon as people ask you specifics with things like this, all of a sudden you can't think of anything. It's like, I've never heard a song before.
Goes right out of your head.
What is music?
Aaron AJ Navarro from La Cronica de Hoy asked Mike and Josh, how did you make the toxic bromance between your characters work so well?
Well, we hate each other.
Can I just... Mike does this joke sometimes, and sometimes he follows it up with the punchline of like, we
Just
don't
kidding.
actually, just kidding, we're great friends. But in the UK last week, we did an interview where he committed so much to this joke that it sounded like I bullied you. It was extraordinary. But I think today he's going to give...
Josh genuinely in the middle of the interview was screaming at me, please tell them that you're joking. Look, we had, as Z was saying earlier, we had a very luxuriant time 6 weeks prior to actually shooting. By the time when we got to Boston, we had 6 weeks of training and rehearsal with Luca and Justin and Amy, and just getting to know each other. And then on top of that, Josh and I would just spend any other time that we had just running lines around Boston, just walking around, and we would just run lines. We'd go to the park, we would just walk around the city, and we would just run the lines. And by the time we actually got to those scenes, Josh and I also commuted every day together, so we spent so much time together. And then more or less, we knew each other's lines like that, so we were able to kind of just come in and be like, ba, 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 just like a tennis match, just be right on top of each other. And when you're, as an actor, when you're given the opportunity to work with another amazing actor such as Josh, with such strong instincts and specific choices, Josh pings me something, and that gives me something to actually play with, to throw him back. And I think we both understood these people pretty well. We understood the roles that we needed to play for each other. And it gave us the kind of freedom and the space to play and make choices. And Luca was really great in terms of feeding us ideas and directing us in the position that we needed to go. And I think between genuinely the three of us, we just very much knew instinctually what direction we all kind of wanted the story to go in.
Can I answer that question?
Please.
Even though I'm not an actor?
Please, yes.
Watching this experience, everyone knows what Luca Guadagnino can get out of actors and how safe an environment he makes for them to reach to places they didn't know that they wanted to go. And I think that these actors were very difficult. And I think Luca pushed everybody in a way past their comfort zone sometimes, to be honest. But what he got from everyone was so exquisite and so nuanced, and you know, he made them all spend so much time with each other. Thank God they liked each other. But you know, enough.
What was the joke again?
Just kidding. I love him.
Thank you for that. Stacy Yvonne from Pride.com asked Zendaya, at the premiere you asked the audience not to judge Tashi too harshly, but I've heard an overwhelming consensus that people love Tashi being a baddie. Have you learned to embrace her being a bit of a villainess, or do you feel like she's just misunderstood?
Well, I think, you know, I think the response might be just like the refreshing nature that it's a female character that doesn't have to be likable and doesn't care about you liking her. It doesn't ask for forgiveness. And I think that is probably refreshing maybe to some people. And I understand that, and that was refreshing to me when I read her, and that was why I wanted to play her, you know. But I think, you know, honestly, I say that before screening sometimes, because I feel like it's our natural instinct to judge people in general. So it's easy to judge these characters, and I understand that because we all do. And I think the beauty of this film is that your mind will change, because I know mine has. Every time I watch it, every time I read it, every time we were playing. I mean, honestly, I had preconceived notions about the characters, and then these guys came in, and with their performances alone, you know, changed my perception of these characters. What they brought to them, how they, you know, embodied them, the life they gave them. So I think it's one of those things that, you know, it's ever changing. How I feel, or my perception of the characters, is ever changing. And so every time I watch it, and I made the dang thing, I'm still surprised, and that every time I go, oh well, this time I'm kind of feeling for this character now, or this time I'm team so and so, and this, you know, so you're constantly living with them and learning something new about them. So I say that only because I know that you'll be wrong. Like, you're gonna have an initial reaction, and then you'll come back and you'll change it. And that's the beauty of it, you know. And just to empathize with them.
Sounds like you were glad you did a character that scared you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
I love that. Don't kill me, guys. But I'm going to thank everyone so much for joining us today and remind you guys that Challengers is in theaters next Friday, April 26th. Thank you guys so much for making this art and for being here today. Thank you.
Thank you for your
Thank you.
time.
Absolutely.
Thank you all.